They say respect is earned in the ring, but sometimes it's already there, you just can't see it yet. Tonight, in a dimly lit underground fight club on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, a cocky young fighter named Derek the Destroyer Cassidy is about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. He's 26, undefeated in 12 bouts, and convinced he's untouchable. His fists are fast, his ego faster. And standing between him and another easy payday is a 64-year-old referee with piercing blue eyes, a gray beard, and hands that have broken boards, bricks, and more than a few egos in their time. Derek doesn't know those hands once belonged to a world karate champion. He doesn't know that the man adjusting his black and white striped shirt is a living legend, an action star, a martial arts icon, and a man whose name became synonymous with unstoppable power. All Derek sees is an old guy who probably should be home watching reruns of his own movies. But tonight, Chucknorris is about to remind everyone in that room why his name still carries weight. And it's not because of Hollywood. It's because when you've truly mastered something, it never leaves you. The warehouse on the edge of Dallas smells like motor oil, sweat, and bad decisions. It's the kind of place where the city's underground fighting scene thrives. No athletic commissions, no drug tests, no rules except the ones that keep people from dying. 200 people are packed around a makeshift ring, their faces hungry for violence and spectacle. Money changes hands in crumpled bills and digital transfers. Phones are held high, ready to capture the next viral knockout. Inside the ring, Derek Cassidy shadowboxes with the confidence of someone who's never truly been tested. He's wearing red shorts with gold trim. His nickname, the Destroyer, emblazoned across the waistband in letters designed to intimidate. His cornermen massage his shoulders, whispering encouragement he doesn't need. He already believes he's the second coming of Mike Tyson. Another easy 10 grand, Derek mutters to himself, rolling his neck until it cracks. These old promoters keep feeding me tomato cans. His opponent tonight is a journeyman fighter named Carlos Mendez, a 34-year-old with an 8-7 record, who's fighting to keep his lights on and his kids fed. Carlos isn't here to make history. He's here to survive, collect his purse, and go home to his family. Everyone in the building knows how this ends. They're just here to see how brutal it gets. But before the bell can ring, the referee climbs through the ropes. Derek glances over and does a double take. Then he starts laughing. No fucking way. Derek says loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Is that Chucknorris? It is. Chucknorris stands in the center of the ring. 64 years old, but still carrying himself with the posture of a warrior. His gray beard is neatly trimmed. His blue eyes are calm and clear. He's wearing the standard referee uniform, but somehow on him it looks different, like he's wearing it as a courtesy, not because he needs the authority it represents. Derek's cornerman leans in. Yeah, man. Norris refs these underground fights sometimes. Does it for free. Some kind of community service thing. Community service? Derek grins, shaking his head. What? Did he get a DUI in his walker? His team laughs nervously. A few people in the crowd chuckle, but the older heads, the ones who remember when Chucknorris was his prime, shift uncomfortably. You don't disrespect a legend. Not if you know anything about the history of martial arts. Chuck continues his pre-fight inspection, checking the ropes, the canvas, the fighter's gloves. He moves with quiet efficiency, a man who's done this 1,000 times and doesn't need to rush. Derek steps forward, deliberately invading Chuck's space. Hey, Mr. Norris. Big fan. Loved your movies back in the day. My dad used to watch them. Chuck looks at him. Really looks at him. Not with anger. Not with amusement. Just complete presence. The kind of attention that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world for that moment. Thank you, Chuck says simply. His voice is calm, measured, with that distinctive Texas drawl. Your gloves good. Oh, yeah, gloves are great. But listen, just so you know, I move pretty fast in there. Wouldn't want you to pull a hamstring trying to keep up. Derek grins like he's just told the funniest joke in the world. Chuck's expression doesn't change. I'll manage. I mean, no disrespect, but you're what, 70? Shouldn't you be retired? Playing golf or something. 64. Chuck corrects quietly. And I don't golf. Derek laughs, turning to the crowd. Guys, we got Chucknorris here. Let's hear it for the legend. He starts a slow clap that maybe a dozen people join, most of them mocking. Chuck doesn't react to the theatrics. He's dealt with bigger egos in better shape. He simply steps back and signals to both corners. Protect yourselves at all times. Obey my commands. Touch gloves if you want to. Derek walks to the center, but doesn't offer his gloves. Instead, he leans in close to Chuck. Try not to have a heart attack out here. Old-timer. I'd hate for my knockout to be overshadowed by you needing CPR. Chuck meets his eyes. For just a moment, there's something in that gaze, not a threat, not a warning, but a kind of ancient knowing, like looking into the eyes of a wolf that's chosen not to bite. Worry about your opponent, son, Chuck says quietly. Not me. The bell rings. The fight is a massacre from the opening second. Derek explodes out his corner, like a man possessed. His jab is sharp and fast, snapping Carlos's head back repeatedly. His hooks dig into the body with brutal precision. Carlos tries to circle, tries to clinch, tries anything to slow down the assault, but Derek is relentless, fueled by ego and the need to impress the growing crowd. Come on, old man. Derek shouts after landing a vicious four-punch combination. You watching this? Chuck watches from the optimal position, hands clasped behind his back, eyes tracking every movement with the precision of someone who studied combat for over 50 years. He's not just watching punches. He's reading intent, balance, energy, technique. It's a language he learned in dojos across Asia and America, refined through thousands of hours of training and competition. By the end of round one, Carlos's left eye is swelling shut. His corner works frantically with ice and swell, but they all know what's coming. This is just a matter of time. Round two is worse. Derek starts showboating, dropping his hands, sticking out his chin, inviting Carlos to hit him. When Carlos tries, Derek slips the punch with exaggerated movement and counters with a devastating uppercut that sends Carlos crashing to the canvas. The crowd explodes. Chuck steps in immediately, positioning himself between the fighters. Back to your corner, he tells Derek, his voice firm but calm. Derek throws his hands up, playing to the phones recording from every angle. What? That was clean. I know it was. Corner. Now. There's something in Chuck's tone, not aggression, not anger, just absolute certainty, that makes Derek hesitate. But only for a moment. Then the arrogance floods back, and he struts to his corner, arms raised in premature victory. Chuck kneels beside Carlos, checking his eyes, his responsiveness. Can you continue? Carlos nods, spitting blood into the bucket his corner holds out. Yeah, I'm good. Chuck looks into his eyes. Really looks. He sees the pride, the desperation, the bills piling up at home. He also sees a man who's absorbed too much damage already. You sure? Carlos meets his gaze. I got kids, Mr. Norris. I need this purse. Chuck understands that language. He's been around fighters his whole life. He gives Carlos an 8 count and lets the fight continue, but his eyes are sharper now, watching for any sign that Carlos can't protect himself. When round 3 begins, Derek has crossed a line from competitive to cruel. He's not trying to win anymore. He's trying to create a highlight reel. Every punch is thrown with bad intentions. He backs Carlos into the ropes and unleashes a combination that is half the crowd cheering and half turning away. Chuck steps between them decisively. That's it. Fight's over. Derek doesn't step back. He's breathing hard, sweat flying, adrenaline and ego mixing into something toxic. Get out of my way, old man. I'm not done. Yes, you are, Chuck says, his voice level. He can't defend himself intelligently. It's over. I said move. Derek places both hands on Chuck's chest and shoves him. The warehouse goes completely silent. It's not a hard shove. Chuck barely moves. He's rooted to the spot like an oak tree, his stance perfect, his balance unshakable. But the disrespect is absolute. In any legitimate combat sport, touching a referee is grounds for immediate disqualification and potential criminal charges. But this isn't legitimate. This is underground. There are no commissions here, no oversight, no rules except the ones enforced by the people in the room. Chuck looks at Derek with those piercing blue eyes, still calm, still controlled. But something has shifted. You need to take a step back, son. Derek laughs. Actually laughs, the sound echoing in the shocked silence. Or what? You gonna roundhouse kick me like in the movies? Hate to break it to you, Grandpa, but those were stunt doubles and special effects. This is real life. You're just an old man who got famous pretending to fight. The words hang in the air like poison. Even Derek's cornermen look uncomfortable now. Pete, his trainer, tries to intervene. Derek, come on, man. Nah, I'm serious. Derek's on a roll now, feeding off the crowd's stunned attention. Chucknorris, the legend, Walker, Texas Ranger. All those internet memes about how tough you are. But look at you. You're what, 100 years old? You probably can't even do a push-up anymore. And these people are supposed to respect you? You're just a washed-up actor playing dress-up. Chuck doesn't respond immediately. He simply signals to the judges that the fight is over by TKO. He raises Derek's hand, the winner by technicality, though everyone in the room feels dirty about it. As the crowd begins to disperse and Derek struts around the ring like he's conquered the world, one man in the back of the warehouse, a 60-year-old with the weathered look of someone who spent his life in martial arts, pulls out his phone and starts frantically scrolling through old videos. Oh, these kids don't know, he mutters, shaking his head. They have no idea who they're dealing with. 20 minutes later, Derek is in his makeshift locker room, really just a section-off corner of the warehouse with folding chairs and a water cooler. He's surrounded by his team, counting his money, watching the fight clips that are already going viral on social media. Yo, I'm trending, Derek announces, showing his phone around. Look at this. Fighter disrespects Chucknorris. I'm about to blow up. Pete isn't smiling. You shouldn't have pushed him, Derek. That's a line you don't cross. What's he gonna do? Sue me? The old man should be grateful I didn't knock him out too. Derek takes a long drink of water, still riding the adrenaline high. Probably would have broken his hip. Derek. Relax, Pete. I'm untouchable. And now I got name recognition. Chucknorris. That's mainstream attention, baby. There's a knock on the doorframe. They all turn to see Chuck standing there, out of his referee shirt now, wearing a simple black GI top and jeans. His duffel bag is slung over one shoulder. His expression is neutral, but there's something in his posture, a coiled readiness, that makes the small room feel suddenly smaller. Can I talk to you? Chuck asks, his Texas drawl soft but clear. Derek leans back in his chair, hands behind his head. Sure thing, Mr. Norris. Come to get my autograph before I'm too famous. Chuck steps inside. Several people from the crowd have gathered at the door, sensing something is about to happen. They're not wrong. I wanted to give you an opportunity, Chuck says quietly. An opportunity? Derek grins. For what? A part in Walker, Texas Ranger, the retirement home years? A few nervous chuckles from his team. Chuck doesn't smile. An opportunity to learn something. Learn what? How to be a washed-up has-been. Chuck's expression doesn't change, but his eyes, those blue eyes that have stared down real danger in real fights, focus on Derek with uncomfortable intensity. You're talented. You got speed, power, decent technique. But you fight like someone who's never faced a real challenge. That's because nobody can challenge me. I can. The words drop like a bomb in the small space. Derek sits up slowly, his grin fading into something more dangerous. What did you just say? I'm challenging you. Here, tonight. No gloves. No rounds. No referee. Just you and me, until one of us can't continue. The room erupts in murmurs. Pete steps forward, his face pale. Chuck, with all due respect, you're 64 years old. Derek's in his prime. He'll kill you. Maybe, Chuck says calmly. But I doubt it. Derek stands up, and for the first time tonight, there's genuine interest in his eyes. Not respect. He's still incapable of that. But curiosity, like a predator that spotted something unexpected. You're serious? You want to fight me? I want to teach you, Chuck corrects. But if fighting is the only language you understand, then yes. Derek looks around the room, then at the growing crowd at the door. Phones are already out, already recording. This is a kind of viral moment that launches careers. Young lion destroys old legend who got too cocky. His brand will explode. Sponsorships. Maybe even a UFC contract. All right, old man, Derek says, pulling off his shirt. But when I send you to the hospital, remember you asked for this. Chuck nods once. Same to you, son. As Derek and Chuck prepare to face each other in the ring, the man from earlier, the martial artist who recognized Chuck, is frantically showing his phone to anyone who will watch. That kid has no idea what he just agreed to. He keeps saying, no idea. Most people in the crowd are too young to remember Chuck Norris in his prime. They know him from memes, from old movies, from cultural references their parents made. They don't know the real history. But history doesn't care if you know it. It just is. Chuck Norris didn't become famous and then learn martial arts. He learned martial arts and then became famous. He earned his black belt in Tang Soo, due while serving the Air Force in South Korea. He trained directly under the legendary masters. When he returned to America, he opened his own chain of karate schools and began competing. And he didn't just compete, he dominated. From 1964 to 1974, Chuck Norris was one of the most successful tournament karate fighters in the world. He was undefeated as a professional for years. He won countless championships. He fought the best fighters of his era and beat them. His students included Steve McQueen, Priscilla Presley, and Donnie and Marie Osmond. He sparred with Bruce Lee. Actual sparring, not movie choreography. They pushed each other, learned from each other, respected each other as true martial artists. Chuck created his own fighting system called Chun Kuk Do, a synthesis of all his training, designed for real-world effectiveness. He earned black belts in multiple disciplines. He trained in judo, jiu-jitsu, and karate. He's been studying martial arts for over 60 years. 60 years. Most people don't stick with anything for 60 years. Chuck Norris has been perfecting the art of combat since before Derek's parents were born, and now. As he climbs through the ropes into the ring, a few of the older spectators begin to clap. It starts slow. A handful of people who remember watching him fight in the 60s and 70s, who train in his schools, who understand what they're about to witness. The applause grows. Derek doesn't understand it. What is this, a nostalgia show? Chuck removes his GI top, revealing a lean, surprisingly muscular frame for a man his age. His body doesn't have the bulk of youth, but it has the definition of someone who never stopped training. There are scars, evidence of a life spent in real combat, not just movie fights. On his left shoulder is a tattoo, simple black kanji characters. Someone in the crowd who reads Japanese translates quietly, warrior spirit. Chuck faces Derek across the ring. There's no hatred in his expression, no anger, just a kind of patient sadness, like a teacher who's tried every other method and has finally accepted that some lessons can only be learned the hard way. Last chance to walk away, Derek. Chuck says softly, no shame in it. Derek spits on the canvas. Fuck your last chances. Old man, let's do this. Chuck closes his eyes for just a moment. Those who know martial arts recognize what he's doing. Centering himself, controlling his breathing, entering the mental state that turns technique into instinct. When his eyes open again, something has changed. The referee is gone. The actor is gone. The 64-year-old man is gone. In his place stand the fighter who never truly left. The warehouse holds its breath. There's no bell, no formal start. Derek charges forward with the same aggressive blitzing style that's won him 12 straight fights. A storm of jabs, hooks, and power punches designed to overwhelm through sheer volume and speed. Not a single one lands. Chuck moves with fluidity that seems impossible for a man his age. He doesn't block the punches. He's simply not there when they arrive. Each attack meets only air. He's not faster than Derek. That's not how this works. He's more efficient. Every movement is minimal, precise, refined through tens of thousands of hours of practice. Derek throws a heavy overhand right, the same punch that knocked out his last 3 opponents. Chuck leans back exactly 1 inch, close enough that Derek feels the wind of his own miss, far enough that there's no contact. The momentum carries Derek slightly forward, off balance. Chuck doesn't counter. Not yet. Derek resets, frustrated, and throws a combination he's drilled 1,000 times. Jab, jab, cross, left hook. It's a good combination. Clean. Fast. Against anyone else in this building, it would land. But Chuck has seen this exact combination probably 50,000 times. He's taught it to hundreds of students. He knows where every punch is going before Derek's muscles even fire. He slips outside the first jab, leans back on the second, turns his body to let the cross pass harmlessly by, and ducks under the hook. He's 40 years older than Derek, but he makes Derek look like he's moving underwater. The crowd is murmuring now. Even Derek's biggest supporters can sense something is wrong. Derek comes in again, throwing more wildly now, power over precision. Chuck circles smoothly, hands low, not taunting, just present. His breathing is calm and controlled. You're fighting with anger, Chuck says, not even breathing hard. Anger clouds judgment, makes you slow. Shut up. Derek lunges with a wild haymaker. This time, Chuck counters. It's not flashy. There's no spinning kick, no flying technique, nothing that looks like a movie. Chuck simply steps inside Derek's reach, sets a stance perfectly, and delivers a classic reverse punch, a basic karate technique called gazuki, directly to Derek's solar plexus. The impact is surgical. Derek's breath explodes out of him in a shocked gasp. He staggers backward, eyes wide, unable to inhale. It feels like being hit with a baseball bat. The force doesn't just hurt, it disrupts everything. His breathing, his rhythm, his confidence. Chuck returns to his stance, hands open, ready but not aggressive. You can still stop this, Chuck says quietly. But Derek can't. Won't. Pride has him in a chokehold tighter than any submission hold ever could. He charges again, desperation mixing with rage. And Chuck begins to teach. Every sloppy technique Derek throws, Chuck counters with a lesson. Punch too wide? Chuck delivers a precise ridge hand strike to the exposed ribs, a technique from his Tang Soo Do days. Drop your guard? Chuck snaps a perfectly chambered front kick into the midsection. Basic, classical, devastating. Telegraph your movement? Chuck executes a textbook foot sweep that sends Derek crashing to the canvas. It's not brutal in the way Derek's earlier fight was brutal. Chuck isn't trying to injure or destroy. He's demonstrating. Every technique is controlled, precise, and educational. This is what mastery looks like after 60 years of dedication. Not the explosive violence of youth, but the refined economy of motion that comes from a lifetime of study. Derek gets up, his face red with humiliation and exertion. His perfectly styled hair is plastered to his head with sweat. His cornermen are yelling for him to stop, but he can't hear them over the roaring in his ears, the sound of his entire self-image crumbling. He rushes Chuck one final time, throwing everything he has left. Chuck catches Derek's arm mid-punch with perfect timing, redirects the energy using basic jiu-jitsu principles, and takes him to ground with a classical hip throw. Before Derek can even process what's happening, Chuck has him in a controlled position, not choking him, not breaking anything, just holding him there with locks that would take Derek months to even understand, let alone escape. Chuck leans in close, his voice gentle despite everything. You have talent, Derek. Real talent. But talent without discipline is just chaos. And chaos always burns itself out. Do you understand? Derek's chest heaves. Sweat and tears mix on his face as he stares up at the ceiling, completely helpless in the grip of a man old enough to be his grandfather. Do you understand? Chuck asks again, patient. Derek nods, unable to speak. Chuck releases him and stands up smoothly, offering his hand. Derek stares at it, that weathered, scarred hand that just dismantled him with techniques older than his parents. His entire worldview is shattered. Everything he thought he knew about strength, about power, about what makes a real fighter, it's all been exposed as hollow. Slowly, shakily, Derek reaches up and takes the hand. Chuck pulls him to his feet with surprising strength. Thank you, Derek whispers, barely audible. Chuck places a hand on his shoulder. Now the real training can begin. The warehouse is silent except for Derek's ragged breathing and the distant sound of traffic outside. Slowly, People begin to filter out, some in stunned silence, others frantically uploading what they just witnessed. It'll be everywhere by morning, not as the meme Derek hoped for, but as something else entirely. A reminder, a lesson. Chuck retrieves his GI top and his bag. He's breathing a bit harder than normal, but otherwise looks none the worse for wear. A few of the older spectators approach him, bowing slightly, offering quiet thanks. Chuck accepts each gesture with humble nods, but doesn't linger in the moment. As he heads to the exit, Pete, Derek's trainer, stops him. I've been in this business 40 years. I've never seen anything like that. Chuck offers a slight smile, the first real warmth he's shown all night. Sure you have, Pete. Back when you were coming up, fighters trained to respect the art first, the money second. You just been in this underground scene so long you forgot what real martial arts looks like. Those days are gone, Pete says with a sigh. They don't have to be, Chuck replies, glancing back at Derek, who's now sitting on a stool in the corner, staring at his hands like they belong to someone else. Every generation thinks they invented confidence. They just need someone to show them the difference between confidence and arrogance. Pete hesitates, then asks, "Would you train him?" Derek, he's got real talent, but his head... Chuck considers this. That depends entirely on him. I can teach technique all day long, but humility, respect, those have to be learned through personal choice. If he's ready to be a student again, really be a student, I'll consider it. He walks out into the warm Texas night, his old Ford F-150 waiting in the gravel lot. As he drives away, the Dallas skyline glowing in the distance, Chuck thinks about all the young fighters he's encountered over the years. So many chasing fame without understanding the foundations of the art. So many confusing viral moments with lasting legacy. A few will figure it out. Most won't. But the ones who do all share something in common. They learn when to stop talking and start listening. Back inside, Carlos, the fighter Derek had brutalized earlier, approaches Derek with an ice pack still pressed to his swollen eye. "Hey, man," Carlos says quietly. Derek looks up, shame flooding his face. "I'm sorry for what I did to you in there. That was..." "I know." Carlos sits down beside him. "I've been where you are. Not the same circumstances, but the same lesson. About 5 years ago, I was just like you, arrogant, thought I was untouchable. Then I fought a guy who taught me humility the hard way. What happened? I got humbled, just like you. And I had a choice, stay bitter or grow up." Carlos manages a slight smile through his bruised face. "I chose to grow up. Got married. Had kids. Started fighting for them instead of for my ego. Best decision I ever made." Derek nods slowly, letting that sink in. "That man who just schooled you?" Carlos continues. "That's Chucknorris. Not the meme. Not the action star. The real Chucknorris. One of the greatest martial artists America has ever produced. You got taught by a living legend tonight. Most fighters would pay everything they have for that opportunity. You got it for free." "I don't feel lucky," Derek admits. "You will," Carlos says, standing up, "once your ego heals. Which, trust me, takes longer than the body." 5 days later, Derek pulls up to a modest building in North Dallas. The sign outside reads Chun Kuk Do Institute in simple letters. No flash, no celebrity photos. Just a traditional martial arts school. Inside, Chuck is teaching an afternoon class, a mix of teenagers, adults, even a few seniors. They're practicing basic forms, moving through techniques with focused precision. There's no music, no shouting, no attitude. Just the sound of feet on mats and controlled breathing. When Chuck sees Derek standing in the doorway, something passes across his face. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. Recognition. Maybe hope. Derek waits until the class takes a water break, then approaches. "I want to learn," Derek says, his voice quiet and genuine. "Not fight. Learn. Really learn. If you'll have me." Chuck studies him for a long moment. "You understand what that means? It means starting over. White belt. Fundamentals. No shortcuts. No special treatment because you're undefeated in some underground circuit. I understand, sensei. The word sensei hangs in the air. It's the first time Derek has called anyone by that title with genuine respect. Chuck nods slowly. White GI is in the back. Class resumes in 3 minutes. As Derek turns to go, Chuck adds, "And Derek, your ego stays outside. This is a place of learning, not proving." "Yes, sensei." When Derek emerges in a plain white GI, looking like every other beginner in the room, several students glance over curiously. One of them, a teenage girl with a purple belt, recognizes him from the viral video. "Hey, aren't you that fighter? The one from the video?" Derek tenses, expecting mockery, but her expression is curious, not cruel. "Yeah," he admits. "That took guts," she says. "Coming back to learn after, most people would have just stayed mad and blamed everyone else." Derek blinks, surprised. "You think?" Master Norris says the hardest technique in all of martial arts isn't a kick or a punch. It's admitting you were wrong and choosing to change. She bows slightly, a gesture of respect, and returns to her position on the mat. Derek takes his place at the back of the class, alongside genuine beginners. An accountant in his 40s, a college student, a grandmother in her 60s. None of them know his record. None of them care about his Instagram followers or his highlight reels. Here, in this space, everyone is just trying to learn. Chuck begins the class with a traditional bow. Everyone responds in unison, including Derek. Then Chuck starts teaching the most fundamental stance in Chun Kuk-Do, the foundation upon which every other technique is built. Derek has thrown thousands of punches in his life. He's won 12 professional fights. But he's never stood like this, with this attention to detail, this focus on the subtle weight distribution, the breathing, the mental presence that grounds you before any physical movement. It's humbling. It's also, Derek realizes as he follows along with the basic drills, exactly what he needs. Halfway through the class, Chuck walks past Derek's position, observing his stance. He makes a small adjustment to Derek's hip alignment, just a slight rotation, and suddenly the stance feels completely different, more grounded, more powerful, better, Chuck says simply, then moves on to the next student. That one word, better, means more to Derek than any championship belt ever could. So what do we take from all this? In a world obsessed with viral moments, with savage comebacks, with the loudest voice and the most outrageous flex, we've forgotten something essential about real strength. It doesn't need to announce itself. Chucknorris spent decades mastering his craft in dojos where no cameras recorded, in tournaments before social media existed, in an era when you train for the love of the art itself. Not for likes, not for followers, not for brand deals. When he'd proven everything he needed to prove, he stepped back, not because he was finished, not because he couldn't still compete, but because he had nothing left to prove to anyone except himself. And that's the part we miss in our highlight reel culture. We encounter Derek Cassidy types everywhere, young, talented, hungry, and completely convinced their recent success makes them untouchable. They mistake early victories for ultimate mastery. They confuse an absence of challenge with the presence of dominance. They collect wins like trophies and think that makes them complete. But there's always someone who's seen more, fought harder, studied deeper, survived longer. There's always that quiet person in the back of the room who knows exactly how dangerous they could be and chooses kindness instead. Who could destroy you but would rather teach you? Who remembers what it was like to be young and arrogant and absolutely certain they knew everything? Chucknorris didn't need to accept Derek's disrespect. He could have walked away, let the kid have his moment, gone home to a successful life. But he saw something in that moment. An opportunity not just a humble and arrogant fighter, but to potentially save him from a path of self-destruction. Because that's what unchecked ego does. It destroys. Not all at once, but slowly, relationship by relationship, opportunity by opportunity, until you're left alone with your trophies and your highlight reels and nobody who actually cares about you as a person. Derek learned this lesson in the most painful way possible, not through injury, but through total ego death, through the complete dismantling of everything he thought he knew about himself. And here's the beautiful part. He didn't stay down. He could have. He could have blamed Chuck, blamed the circumstances, blamed everyone but himself, and spent the rest of his career bitter and broken. But he didn't. He showed up. He put on a white belt. He stood in the back of a class with teenagers and grandmothers and admitted he had everything to learn. That takes a different kind of courage than stepping into a cage. It takes the courage to be vulnerable, to be wrong, to start completely over. And that's where real growth begins. Chuck didn't destroy Derek that night in the warehouse. He saved him from a trajectory that led to brain damage, broken relationships, legal troubles, and a highlight reel nobody would remember in 5 years. He gave Derek something infinitely more valuable than a win or a loss or a viral moment. He gave him perspective. The next time you're tempted to dismiss someone because they're older, quieter, less flashy than you, remember this story. Remember that the person who's truly mastered something doesn't need to tell you about it. They just are it. Their presence speaks volumes their mouth never needs to say. And when that person offers to teach you something, whether through words or through the kind of physical lesson Chuck gave Derek, you have two choices. You can double down on your arrogance, protect your fragile ego, and stay exactly where you are, or you can swallow your pride, bow your head, and say those two powerful words that unlock every door in life. Teach me, because the strongest people aren't the ones who never lose. They're the ones who learn from everyone, especially from the old man in the referee's shirt who you thought was too old to matter, too past his prime to be relevant, too much of a relic to take seriously. True mastery isn't about domination. It's about understanding when to apply force and when to show restraint, when to fight and when to teach, when to prove yourself and when your mere presence is proof enough. Chucknorris has known this for 6 decades. And now, slowly, painfully, beautifully, Derek Cassidy is learning it too. The memes got one thing right about Chucknorris, though. He is unstoppable. Not because he can roundhouse kick through steel or defeat armies single-handedly, but because he represents something that never goes out of style, never loses its power, never becomes obsolete. Discipline, respect, humility, mastery. Those things don't age. They don't retire. They don't need validation from the crowd. They just are. Never underestimate someone who has nothing left to prove. They're the most dangerous ones of all. Not because they'll hurt you, but because they'll show you exactly who you really are. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they'll show you who you could become.